And now, it is the 6th year of the Ming Dynasty. In front of us lies Tianqi, Xicheng District, Beijing. The gray-haired old lady coughed a little. The old lady asked Dr. Liu if her illness was serious. The doctor asked her not to worry and offered her 2 pairs of medications so that she could take care of herself. Dr. Liu asked not to get angry and to speak especially politely with the children. The gray-haired old woman nodded her head and told the doctor that she would definitely listen to him. A young boy with a hammer on his shoulder appeared on the threshold. He greeted his mother joyfully. They had to hurry and not let Dr. Liu leave empty-handed again. The boy told the doctor that this was payment for all the years their family had been coming to see him, so he had to see her today. The doctor exclaimed that he was at it again. He had been here for 5 or 6 years, and he did not take money from anyone. The boy asked his mother not to be angry. He hugged the doctor and told him that he had been told since childhood that you can't take anything for free. The mother exclaimed that she was angry with him for not being able to do such a small thing and making Dr. Liu look bad. She called him an unworthy son. The grandmother exclaimed that she was not well, but seriously ill, and began to cough. Dr. Liu said that the boy had harvested a good crop of sweet potatoes. He asked to give him some of this potato as his daughter loves it very much. The boy immediately shouted that of course he would give it back. If he didn't have enough, he would go and dig up some more in the field. Dr. Liu had already said goodbye to the boy and his mother, taking the potatoes with him. The guy waved his hand in response and asked him to be careful on the road. When the doctor left, the boy asked his mother who this Dr. Liu was and why he didn't charge for the treatment. The old woman smiled tenderly and replied that he was not from the capital and that he was a foreigner. As Dr. Liu walked along the road, children greeted him and waved their hands. One of the girls said that he is no worse than Mr. Hua too. She heard that he adopted an orphan, and he has been treating their ordinary people for 5 or 6 years now, without taking a penny. The girl saw her dad and threw herself on Dr. Liu's neck. She called him their great immortal. The doctor was very happy that the girl missed her dad. She exclaimed that he had not taken the money again, and she said that they had run out of rice, so it would be fair to take some money. But the father laughed and said that he was sorry, but he did not take the money again, but he brought his daughter her favorite food, namely, the baked sweetest potato, the man asked. Not to blame the father because it was not easy for him either. The daughter replied that she did not blame him, but understood him perfectly. Dad is a good man. That's why he did it. He tried to convey to his daughter that he was doing good deeds. The girl never stopped saying that her dad was good. She loved her father very much. Meanwhile, somewhere nearby, a powerful explosion occurred. The sky lit up with a bright purple flame. This beam of bright light connected with the earth. Many houses flew into the air from such a terrible explosion. Multi-story buildings were broken in half. Dr. Liu began to protect his daughter with his body. She pressed herself against him, burying her head in his chest. He hugged her as tightly as he could, and the girl was very scared. Clouds of gray smoke rose from the ground straight into the sky. Nothing was visible around. Suddenly, a guy with pointy ears appeared at the scene of the explosion. He exclaimed that this must be the 10th universe. It's so inconvenient, and for some reason the magic quickly disappears. A shadow in the huge clouds of smoke said that he had gone through many difficulties to find his daughter. Soon he would be able to take her. The guy noticed that there was someone alive among the thick gray smoke. The man with the burnt face asked who he was and if he would bring back his daughter. The burned man continued to scream, clutching his head with his hands. The screams could be heard throughout the area. He asked if they were gods or who they were at all, and why they took his daughter. The guy gave the burnt man a menacing look. He stared at him. They killed her once, banished her soul here, and they still won't let her go. Liu Meng with sharp ears said that he was not the life of this universe. He asked who he was. Then the man grabbed his head with his hands, as if he could not understand or remember who he was. He exclaimed that if he had not asked, he would certainly have forgotten. Liu Meng looked at the man. There was another explosion, and the earth was shattered into pieces. The guy wondered what would happen next. This man was like a madman. In the place where this man stood, an evil, huge monster appeared. He clenched his inhuman fists and began to growl with a terrible, wild roar. Without thinking twice, the boy realized that this was a demon from the 4th universe. He began to slowly approach him to attack. The guy was waiting for his attack. Liu Meng immediately put up a defense and noticed that he had pretty good speed. Is this all he can do? He took out his sharp-bladed weapon and began waving it at the demon. The evil monster began to scream and attack back. The ground was torn to pieces, and the battle continued. The monster flew towards the boy with another powerful blow, but Liu Meng was very nimble and quick. He jumped aside in time. The monster failed to harm the boy. Liu Meng took out his cold weapon. He began waving it at the terrible evil monster. The sounds of battle flew throughout the area. Pieces of earth flew around, and clouds of dust made it impossible to see what was happening. It was good that the boy had supernatural vision. He could see even in the dark of night. The evil monster stood in front of the boy and, struck by his sword, sighed heavily. Streams of blood spurted from his mouth. The boy promised to leave him alive, but asked him to stop because he would not be able to defeat him. The monster clenched its sharp, huge fangs. Streams of scarlet blood flowed through them. But the evil monster began to scream and tried to attack again. The boy also suffered from the monster's blow and began to cough up blood. The monster laughed in response and opened its horrible bloody mouth. Blood continued to splatter around. Liu Meng asked the monster not to waste his breath. He would still need it. He exclaimed that as a demon of the fourth universe, he should know. He won't be able to defeat him as the demon god of the second universe. He won't be strong enough. He has things to do, so he must stop now, and it will save him from certain death. The boy continued to stand and wait for an answer, but the monster wanted to attack him again. The demon aimed a beam of light at him, intending to burn him to ashes, but the protection did not allow it. The monster became even more angry. The boy's defense blinded him. Liu Meng had no intention of giving up. He was very brave and strong. He called the demon too stubborn and began to attack back. He gritted his teeth, getting really angry. The boy began to gather all his strength in his hands. He glowed with a bright purple light. He exclaimed that if he wanted to die, then let him not blame him for it. Many purple lightnings flashed around. They connected from the ground to the sky. The boy with pointy ears noticed that in this world, magic was running out too quickly. But he saw something in front of him. Some huge wolf with bright red eyes appeared in front of her. This demon seemed to have turned into another beast. He couldn't understand how this was possible. The demon began to approach him with incredible speed. He jumped forward, opening his fanged mouth. The clubs were not allowing full vision. Liu Meng rubbed his eyes. The boy noticed that he was losing his power so quickly that he couldn't get his magic back. His vision also began to fail. He could not catch it. He could not focus on the approach of the beast. And so he caught up with the boy, throwing him to the ground with one deft movement. The evil demon pushed him with his paw, knocking him down with all his might. Streams of blood spurted from the boy's mouth. Liu Meng fell backwards onto the hard, cold ground. He cried out in pain. He pressed him to the ground with his huge, powerful paw and began to crush. The monster asked to bury his daughter. A bright white fireball appeared between the boy and the monster. The boy got really angry. He wanted to attack the monster with this ball. Suddenly, a man asked him to stop. He always said not to commit sins, not to kill, and not to fight with others. These sins will lead them all to the abyss. But they seemed to have forgotten the advice he had given them. The man was the missionary Damien. He was Corley's father. The Holy Father asked to give him this man who wanders here, just like them. He is their brother. And let him not forget that it was precisely because he saw his kindness that he helped him find his daughter. He again asked to give him the man who wanders here like them. The monster clenched its fangs. It froze for a moment, looking at the lying boy. The beast began to growl. Liu Meng, too. The boy screamed, in pain, and he did not want to give up. But the Holy Father asked him to calm down, too. They had made enough noise here. Considering all their years of good deeds, they should have restrained themselves. The beast replied that all he had done here was look for his daughter, and now she was dead. At the hands of this man, Damien realized that they were going to ignore his advice. He asked them not to forget that God was watching from heaven. The monster asked if he meant the god's dog. For now, he would be careful and quiet, as always. The monster exclaimed that the Lord is not visible. The beast replied that maybe the Lord does not see, but he sees. There was another huge explosion. The earth was flying around. The beast cast his gaze upon the man. He recognized him as the Holy Father. The Holy Father again said that he sees and knows everything. He tried to reason with them. Then the Holy Father closed his eyes and spread his arms out to the sides. He glowed with a bright yellow light. The man exclaimed to the demon that he had given him a chance, after which he began to push the monster away with his strength, killing him with a cross. Damien looked towards the guy and said that now it was his turn. The boy stood up on his feet. His gaze was too confused. Liu Meng looked at this man and thought that this unknown guy was too dangerous and too strong for him. He decided to get out of here immediately. The Holy Father noticed that this boy was running too fast. He decided to give him some advice and called the guy by name. Liu Meng was very surprised how he knew his name. Then the father said that firstly, he would find the man he was looking for in 396 years. Secondly, he should not trust anyone who pretended to be him. Thirdly, he must not meet with the blonde maid he keeps with him. Damien asked the boy to remember his words. When that day comes, he will return to him. After a little time had passed, the man asked the boy what he felt. They saw each other after a 306-year break. Moda was very serious and looked at the man with interest. His gaze was fixed on him. He offered the boy a taste of the best drink he had here. Liu Meng politely declined and thanked the man. He explained that he was only there to find out a few things. He asked how the man knew about him, what secrets were hidden by the system that called itself him, and the servants around him. And who is he? And for what purpose did he say those strange things? The guy wanted to get to the truth. The man replied that it seemed he had learned little about people and how to behave. He asked him for advice, but he did not have the respect to even address him as you. The man exclaimed that he understood him, and now he would tell him everything. Liu Meng replied that since he had asked him to come to him, it meant that he also had some request for him. The man looked at the boy with concentration. He thought for a moment before starting the conversation. He lowered his head down, blew smoke out of his mouth, and chuckled carefully. So he asked him not to make a mountain out of a molehill. The man said that he understood him and would tell him everything now, after which he suddenly laughed loudly and exclaimed that this was quite good. He spread his arms out to the sides before speaking. The man kept smiling. In that case, he decided to be frank with him. Meanwhile, there were many people sitting in the bar. Some were drinking cocktails, and some were arm wrestling. The man welcomed the boy into the Garden of Eden, which belonged to them, the strangers. Different people were sitting at different tables. Some were playing cards, some were continuing to arm wrestle, and some were calling their girlfriend good. Liu Meng asked if all the people were not here. Why did he call them strangers? The man immediately laughed and lowered his head. He advised using his eyes and looking closely at everyone around him. When the boy looked closely, he really saw something different. In front of him were underwater creatures of the 8th universe. He asked how they got here. One of the visitors turned to the Holy Father. They immediately turned in his direction. A man had a broken arm. When he approached the Holy Father, asked to heal it, he explained that he had a little value of merit. It was a parasitic species of the 7th universe. The boy watched what was happening, trying to understand what was going on. Liu Meng could not understand what meaning of merit this man was talking about. The Holy Father explained that it was a special kind of activity carried out according to the rules of the 10th universe. Removing merit. 5% of merit within a minute. The hand restoration was complete. Damien explained that when a person does good deeds, he accumulates merit. After death, humans are given the opportunity to be reborn in exchange for the amount of merit they have earned. But for races like them, living in higher universes, there is no point in being reborn on Earth. Therefore, they usually exchange merits for the discovery of abilities. Liu Meng replied that they should be used after death, according to him. The man said that this was under normal circumstances, but he was an exception. He can at any time take the value of any person's merit and make it available to him. Of course, a small fee is charged. The boy thanked him for telling him about it and asked him to answer his last question. What exactly is the system that the evil lord has, and why did he say not to trust him? The man closed his eyes again and lowered his head, lost in thought. The Holy Father replied that everything was simple and snapped 2 fingers. It can be understood as a force that is shared among itself. The boy asked if he meant to say that the system was separated from the evil master. Damien replied that it was, but over time the separated force gains its own independent consciousness. In the end, no one likes to be there as a shadow or a replacement. From the demonic species' point of view, it is the possession of a separate deity. Therefore, such things are very threatening to the owner. It is better to process such things as early as possible. As for the maid, he is of the same opinion as before. He should keep away from her. What to do or not to do is up to him. The man waved his hand, looking at the boy. He had something in his fist. Let him consider it a small gift from him, without charging a fee. The Holy Father held out several bright white balls to him. The boy began to examine them. They lay on his palm, as if beckoning with their power. Liu Meng thought that today, there was a lot of information for him about what he had done in the past 300 years. He thanked the man and said that he owed him something. He asked what he could do for him. Damien replied that there was no need to rush and that he would contact him when the time came. The man advised the boy to go and do what he had to do first. Meanwhile, some girl was screaming in tears that she trusted him as a friend. How could he drug her and do this to her? The girl exclaimed that she would never forgive him. She was very upset. The director said that the shooting was over. Lee Huntley was much better. He did not expect that she would play this role so well. The girl told director Chai that he was flattering her, but the director asked everyone else to follow her example. They decided to end it there and have some tea. The girl thought that there was something familiar about this role. One of the guys was angry with the girl. He couldn't understand what she did since the director took her. It's very unfair. The second one replied that she was a newbie and he had the nerve to give her the lead role. She stole his spot as an artist. God knows what kind of boss she was sleeping with for the lead role. Must be with the new director. But she is very beautiful. The front and back of the body must be very soft. The second one asked if he wanted to cuddle her. He could have her in just a few days. After these words, some guy grabbed his hand. Su Chen was in front of them. He asked what happened and asked them to continue talking. The boys immediately said that Mr. Shu had misunderstood them. They were just joking. But the boy asked, didn't they want justice? He drew his eyebrows down to his nose. He turned to security and asked them to throw these two out and not allow them to play roles. When the boys were dragged out of the room by the scruff of the neck, they asked Mr. Shu not to do this to them. They had apologized and asked not to be thrown out. Lee Huntley saw the boy and asked him what brought him there. He asked if she had finished filming. The girl replied that she had just finished. The boy turned around and asked her to go with him. He decided to take her away from here, and so the car sped along the highway. He sat behind the wheel, lost in thought. Su Chen thought that 3 months had already passed. That day, he lost consciousness. The maid came to him and asked why he was sleeping in the hallway. When he came to and found himself in his own home, he realized that Lee Huntley's memory had to be erased. He was furious and tried to settle scores with the system, but he found that it had disappeared. No matter how many times he called for it, there was no answer. Strangely, Moda disappeared too. He did it after all, so he'll do his best to make amends. The girl asked why he kept looking at her without looking away. Su Chen also wanted to ask how she became like this. Her face turned red. The girl replied that earlier he said that he was a shareholder of the Galaxy Group, but she did not believe him, and now there are many rumors about them. Su Chen asked her not to worry about what others think, just to be true to herself. And he helps her because she has a special power. The boy exclaimed that they were almost there. He pressed the gas as hard as he could. The girl got scared and asked him to drive slower. She closed her eyes and pressed her hands to her chest in fear. Su Chen thought about another thing he noticed was that his personality had changed a little. This feeling was very familiar. It's a feeling he doesn't resist and even enjoys a little. A sports car is speed. He got great pleasure from driving. The fair-haired man met Mr. Zhu. He greeted him and asked him to sit down. He asked if this was the lady he was advertising. The girl greeted him back. Zhu Chen asked the guy to get down to business and asked if he had cast her as the lead in his new film. The man laughed in response and said that he couldn't help but put Lee Huntley in the lead role for that kind of money. Only everything changed a little. Su Chen asked him for an explanation. The guy replied that they would not get the main role, but he would give one of the main ones. He can't help it that they chose someone else for the lead role. The guy showed the children a photo and explained that this time she was playing the main role. Meanwhile, the woman was taking pictures of this girl. She was taking a lot of pictures. Qin Xiu, a new star, posed sweetly in the shots. When the filming was over, she told Qin Xiu that was enough for today. This time, the new cover was shot very beautifully. She herself appreciated her work. Qin Xiu came closer and asked to quickly let her see it. The girl really liked the pictures. She looked at them for a long time, admiring herself. The girls looked at the photographs together. They were really very beautiful. For some reason, they both blushed. Apparently, the photos were a bit revealing. She exclaimed that her skills were better than those of the previous photographer. A blonde guy entered the room. He asked Qin Xiu if she had finished filming. The guy asked her to hurry up because it was getting crowded and they needed to leave. Qin Xiu became a little nervous and indignant and then left, but the guy explained that it was really late and it was not the time to be naughty. When the girl came out, there were a lot of fans around. They were standing on the street with posters. The boys shouted her name and confessed their love. They wouldn't let the girl pass. When the girl got to the hotel, she exclaimed that she was very tired and hungry. The guy replied that she deserved it and there was no need to post about the trip. Qin Xiu laughed and said that he was a very good agent. The guy asked the girl not to laugh at him. Dinner was ready and he was in her room. When the girl opened the door, 3 guys were sitting in front of her, tied up and gagged. The men were very scared and they did not understand why they were tied up. She apologized for keeping them waiting and walked gracefully into the room. The boys sighed heavily and asked who she was. They asked to let them go. The girl stood up to fix her hair, after which she unbuttoned her dress. The girl asked them not to be angry and, undressing, began to approach them. She exclaimed that she just wanted to play with them. The boys were breathing very heavily. The girl coughed, after which she laughed tenderly. She was completely naked and stood next to him. She came closer to them and, sitting down opposite them, asked the boys who would be first. They immediately tore their shackles, pulled the gag out of her mouth and began to run towards her. Meanwhile, the blonde boy's phone rang. Mr. Chin was told that Xu Chen, whom he had asked to find, had finally appeared. Their company's new film is collaborating with the Galaxy Group. The actors, led by Xu Chen, will take part in the film, which will give them the opportunity to get to know each other. The guy immediately thanked him. Qin opened the door to Qin Xiu's room and asked her to pack her things and prepare to leave. Qinya was still very sleepy. The boy woke her up so early. The girl asked what had happened. The guy explained that they had found Xu Chen. He had instructed her to go to him under the pretext of collaborating on a project, and he told her not to forget to clean up after herself. He knew what he was talking about. The exhausted boys were scattered around, as if their life and energy had been sucked out. Qin Xiu was happy that she had finally found Xu Chen. She could hardly wait to try him too. Meanwhile, Xu Chen was sitting next to his girlfriend and suddenly sneezed. The girl asked him if he had caught a cold. Xu Chen replied that no, he just felt a chill down his spine. He noticed that the girl was eating a lot and asked her not to fill her stomach. There would be auditions later. She asked him to shut up and replied that she had had her fill for a long time. The girl got really angry. The boy glanced at some note that some girl had slipped him. Xu Chen's expression suddenly changed and his eyebrows moved towards his nose. The note read, "I know what's wrong with Moda, the Lord of Evil." The boy got really angry. He crumpled the note in his hand. The girl who had given him the manuscript began to run away. Xu Chen immediately ran after her. He told his friend that he was a little busy and asked her to go to the studio alone. The girl continued to run, but the boy had almost caught up with her. As the girl began to run even faster, she noticed that he had a good speed. She even slowed down a bit. The girl seemed to be playing with this boy. She ran sometimes faster, sometimes slower. It was as if she had some kind of ability. The girl seemed to be luring him somewhere. However, she was definitely faster than him. Xu Chen could not catch up with the girl. He couldn't understand how she did it. The girl told him that he was running too slow and became faster than lightning. She very quickly found herself on the roof, and then behind a huge ruined building. There were some guys standing behind the wall. They were drinking water and waiting for someone. One of the guys said that they had been waiting for a very long time, and then that same girl appeared next to them. She exclaimed that he was already here, and she pointed to Xu Chen to the boys. The boy had already appeared, finally catching up with the girl. The guys asked her if she was sure about it. He looks like a normal person. And what kind of joke is this anyway? Can a normal person keep up with it? Xu Chen asked Miss Li if she wrote the note and what exactly she meant. The girl asked not to misunderstand her. She wrote it only to hook him. They were asked to test Mr. Xu Chen's strength, so she did a little trick. The boys wanted to test the boy's strength. The girl asked not to worry, there was no one around. They could beat him to death. Xu Chen told the boys that he had been feeling angry lately. The boys' eyes lit up red. He exclaimed that they had come on time, and so a fierce fight began. The guys attacked each other, testing Xu Chen's strength, and the girl continued to watch what was happening, enjoying the spectacle. She exclaimed that it was not bad at all. Xu Chen smashed away one of the guy's heavy fists with a sharp movement. The girl couldn't understand why the internet was so bad here. Meanwhile, Xu Chen had already punched one of the guys in the face. When the girl caught the internet, she was very happy, and the boys said that he had already beaten them. Did they determine his level of strength? Now let her speak. The girl asked the boy to be quiet as she was setting up the boss's broadcast, and she asked what he had just told her. Xu Chen was surprised by the girl's impudence. In principle, it doesn't matter anymore, and now everything is for real. The boy flew to the side, hitting the wall. He grimaced. It was no longer people who were attacking him, but some kind of monsters. They looked like two feathered sharks. They got into a fight, attacking the boy together. He only had time to fight back. They were very strong and pushed the enemy far back to the wall. Clouds of smoke rose into the air. When the boy flew away, he left behind him whole columns of smoke. When Shu Chen turned on his vision, he saw not guys in front of him, but two huge fanged fish. He tried to figure out what kind of two such huge monsters they were. They were really strong. The girl noticed that the boy was quite resilient. She asked the boss if he was sure that his mission was easy. Why don't they just take him to them? She kept looking at her phone. On the other side of the phone, Qin Shu replied that if they could do it, then fine. The girl told the boss back that she was putting them down too much. He was a little stronger than the average person. They could do it and asked him to wait for good news. Qin Shu looked through the screen of her phone at the boy who was trying to fight off the attack of these two monsters. He was in a black haze, a little tired and exhausted. A black haze enveloped the boy completely. Again, nothing was visible around him. Suddenly, the girl who was filming the fight noticed that for some reason the signal had suddenly disappeared. The connection had been interrupted. Shu Chen was shrouded in a black veil. This black smoke rose from the ground to the sky. It enveloped everything around, which looked quite frightening. His eyes changed. He froze in place, concentrating. His gaze was a little creepy. The monster boys thought this was a little strange. They continued to watch the boy. Could he really be a person with black magic? Shu Chen had a strange feeling. Shu Chen concentrated and began to merge with the black haze into one. The boy pulled himself together and began to direct the blow towards one of the monsters. His heavy fist hit the monster right in the chest, sending it flying far into the wall. He fell with all his might, breaking the concrete wall, so much so that foam came out of his mouth. The boy was glad that one of them was hit and neutralized. His gaze fell on the second opponent. This gaze was somehow empty and sinister. The boy began to move closer and closer to the second opponent. He in turn could not understand how this was possible. His water cannon could even penetrate a car. But if that didn't help either, then the monster decided to let the boy try something else. But Shu Chen began to use his other abilities. They really angered him. He concentrated, and transparent water appeared around him. The second monster opened its fanged mouth and cast a frightened look at him. With his hand, which was shrouded in black smoke, the boy grabbed his opponent by the throat. The monster began to squeal and grab his hand to free itself. The girl thought that a dead friend was no longer a friend. She decided to get out of here as soon as possible, and decided not to deal with him anymore. The monster asked the boy to let him go. He made a huge mistake by attacking him and will leave immediately. Shu Chen laughed and replied that he himself did not know where this power came from, but it did not matter. He liked the feeling that he could do anything. But the monster exclaimed that the boy wanted to kill him, and this was contrary to the covenant. Shu Chen replied that this was complete nonsense, and he had never heard of such a thing. The monster began to cry, drooling. He squealed like a beaten dog. Shu Chen clenched his powerful fist. He was enveloped in a bright black haze, but some purple light twisted his hand. Meanwhile, Moda enveloped the girl who was running away with his power. She asked him to let her go. The girl closed her eyes and began to cry. But he asked what she meant and threw her to the ground. The boy asked the gentleman to calm down, and he would explain everything after that. The boy exclaimed that he didn't think they would listen to him in their present state. Shu Chen slowly began to come to his senses. His empty gaze changed to a normal one. He turned towards the guy and threw his victim monster on the ground. He asked if it was his spell, and why shouldn't they talk about it after he's removed it? Moda told his master that he would do so, after which he came closer to him and stood opposite him. He looked him straight in the eyes. The guy asked Moda where he had been all these months and had not warned him. Moda apologized and explained that he had gone to investigate something and had returned late, and asked if his master had felt any changes lately, for example, something related to the system. His master immediately turned his head towards him, asking what he meant. Then he said they would talk about it later. All he wanted to do now was find out where the people who attacked him came from. Moda replied that he was right. He told the girl that if she still wanted to live, she should tell him the reason for the attack. Otherwise, she should not blame them for their ruthlessness. The girl began to explain that they were asked to do this. She began to beg the guys not to kill her. The gentleman answered that they would not kill her, but asked her to answer who her boss was. The girl said she didn't know. She found him on an anonymous strangers forum. She doesn't know anything else about her except that he has a WeChat number. The gentleman asked what kind of strangers these were. Moda replied that these strangers were extraterrestrial beings from another universe, just like him. These two fishmen are inhabitants of the 8th universe of the deep sea. but all usually take human form and are not detected by humans. Then the gentleman asked the girl to show who she really was. The girl asked if they really wanted her to change. Moda exclaimed, "Can't she hear what the gentleman is saying?" and asked to hurry. But they couldn't understand why she started to undress. The girl explained that she was afraid of ruining her clothes because they were very expensive. She is a being from the 9th universe. She is very weak and asks to be left alone. The guys noticed that this girl was a beast. She began to explain that the employer's mission was simple, to test their strength. For their work, they will receive 100,000. She tried to do it. She knows nothing more. The gentleman said that in this way it should be very easy for her to earn money. Moda added that it was not very difficult in any case. The girl explained that in the 10th universe, the rules of this universe would apply to all races and their power would be suppressed. A weak race like hers is essentially the same as a human woman. Many aliens fit into human society and live normal lives. Moda exclaimed that indeed, their kind is not very strong in battle. She speaks the truth. Why don't they just let her go? The master asked how she was to him. But she can't just forget about attacking the master. He'll give her a chance to be a mole and draw out her employer, and he'll pay her when it's done. The girl exclaimed that under no circumstances, the forum does not allow disclosure of information about the employer, and she will be silenced. It's not about money and she really wants to live, but the guy offered her 500,000. Although he thought that it might not work, the boys began to think about the plan. Then the girl started calling her boss and asked if she was still there. The girl explained to Qin Xiu that the network signal was poor, so the live broadcast was interrupted, but she had good news. She had finished work. He is an unusual person, but she does not know what he is. They dealt with him quickly and he seemed very stupid. Now that she has tied him up, why doesn't she come and get him? She is at an abandoned construction site. The gentleman thought about how he feels very bad. Moda asked to show the enemy how weak he was and to lure him out of his hole. Qin Xiu told the girl that she didn't have to pick it up. She wanted the girl to deliver it to her herself. But the girl answered the boss that she managed to catch him. She was afraid that he might escape on the way. The boss said that everything depended on her. She wants her to bring him to the set and she will wait for them here. The girl asked the boss to tell her who she is so she can find her. Qin Xiu realized that she was trying to get information. She told the girl that when she arrived to them, she would come to her personally. When the time came, she would find out everything herself. Qin Xiu told the girl that they had decided so, she would wait for them. Then she hung up. A fair-haired man approached her and asked what had happened to her. She simply opened the door and let them in. "What about their previous plans?" Qin Xiu asked. "Isn't it nice to see the door open?" He replied, "Of course not. That makes one wary. Weren't they planning to approach him first about collaborating on film?" The girl exclaimed that it was a nuisance. In any case, he was so good and she asked him to let her play. The guy replied that he could do as he wanted. The main thing was not to fail. The girl told Xu Chen that Qin Xiu had hung up. He listened to her attentively. Moda told his master that he felt like the other side was on guard. And what should they do now? Xu Chen replied that since that was the case, they would do their best to be there. After all, they were here with him together. Moda said that was exactly what he wanted to say. He must have noticed something. His body is now functioning at the limits of its human capabilities, and magic will occasionally come out. He asked what had happened between him and the system. When Moda glanced at the girl, she covered her ears and said that she knew, so she wasn't listening. Xu Chen was tired of explaining that after that day, the system disappeared and his personality and his body changed a little. He himself felt it. It seems to him that the system may have transferred some of its power to him. He wondered why he would do this, why he would devour the master's consciousness. Xu Chen said that recently he had been thinking a lot about his childhood experiences and the time of the system after he jumped into the river. What an unlucky life and a bad ideal life system. He thinks that the system is behind all this, as much as he would like to tear this bastard system to shreds right now, but he hates his current situation, because with the help of force he can better protect himself and those around him. When the system appears, he will grab him and have a good talk with him. The most urgent thing is to solve the current problems first. He asked the boy to hurry up. Moda immediately agreed with him. And turning to the girl, he asked her to follow the gentleman. She looked at him in fear. Moda added, looking at His Excellency, that he must remind him of two things. Firstly, he must try not to use his abilities, so as not to lose his mind. Secondly, he must keep the covenant. Xu Chen wondered what the covenant was. He thought to himself that the fishman had mentioned it too. The so-called covenant is actually a written rule among their aliens. For the 10th universe is ruled by the God of heaven, and the God has one way to deal with aliens, destroying them. In order not to be noticed by the God of heaven, the following covenant was made, headed by Corleone, the first stranger to reach the earth. It is both a limitation and a protection. If anyone dared to break the covenant, he would personally take care of him. The boy was surprised that the earth was still ruled by the heavenly God. Then he would not be in danger. Moda replied that he had not found the aura of the god on earth, but the first stranger is really very strong, so it will be better if they keep the covenant. And now, when the car was racing along the highway at full speed, Moda explained that he had enchanted him with the magic of sound transmission so that he could speak to him internally. He said that they would split up and he would watch what was happening from the shadows. When the car stopped, they got out. The girl greeted her brother and asked where the entrance to the studio was. The guys in glasses pointed to her with their hands. The girl immediately thanked the guy. Xu Chen was very serious and headed in the direction the boy pointed. He quietly asked Moda how things were going and asked the gentleman to wait a minute. Moda walked up to a certain place and placed his hands on two circles. He thought to himself about the eye of divine vision. A thin purple haze began to rise around him. It enveloped the boy and everything around him. He silently asked to open up. As Xu Chen and the girl entered the room, Moda mentally asked the master to be careful. He subconsciously explained to him that there were more than one enemy here. If a fight breaks out, he asks him to hold out as long as possible. He will solve a more difficult problem first. And here we have the Disney studio. Xu Chen noticed that there are a lot of people here and it will be difficult to find her. But the girl exclaimed that she would help find her and raised her hand up. She has well-developed 5 senses. She has already heard her voice, so she will recognize it when she hears it again. A girl recognized Mr. Eshu and noticed that he came early. She asked if there was anything on the project. The guy answered that it was not work-related, just a personal matter. Then she suggested that he go to the VIP room to rest. Xu Chen asked what she could say about the employer's voice. The girl replied that the voice was that of a woman of about 20, quite gentle, but it made her feel a little scared. She walked forward, sweat running down her face, and asked Mr. Xu Chen if he was there. Sitting on the chair was a girl with pink hair. It was Qin Xu. She said that this was their first meeting and asked them to come in and sit down. Xu Chen asked if she was not Qin Xu and how she knew him. The girl replied that she did not expect Mr. Xu to know her. Then the boy's partner came up to him and whispered in his ear that this was the same woman. The boy asked her not to joke like that and asked if she was sure about it. The girl replied that she was absolutely sure. The fair-haired guy appeared at the threshold and began to enter the office. He asked if the guy was deaf. After all, he was told to come in and sit down. Qin Xiu told Mr. Xu that she thought he had some questions. Why don't he sit down and talk? The boy thought that this woman was most likely not human either, and she knew something about him. He couldn't let her control the conversation. This guy next to her seems dangerous. He decided to leave him to Motu. Qin Xiu said that they will talk, but he asks to go out as an outsider first. The partner asked if he was telling her to get out, but the boss hadn't paid her yet. Qin Xiu glanced at the girl and told her to leave. She also told the blonde boy to leave. He turned around and walked towards the exit, saying that he would let her play. He couldn't do anything anyway. When the girl and the fair-haired guy left, Qin Xiu immediately walked to the door and locked it. She told Mr. Xu that there were only the two of them here now, but Director Ma was still in the office. She asked the director to leave too, and asked him to call Li Han and tell her not to come to the studio today. Suddenly, the director came up to the boy from behind and grabbed him with her hands. He asked what she was doing. Qin Xiu asked the director to just hold it as tightly as possible. Xu Chen asked how she controlled it. The girl explained that it was just mind control. She sat in the chair smiling slightly. Xu Chen exclaimed that she was certainly not human and asked why the aliens were looking for him one after another. The girl replied that it seemed like there was a misunderstanding between them. She was human, just a little special. Qin Xiu said that she was just like him. The boy looked at her thoughtfully. Qin Xiu said that if you put it in other words, they are the same as him. The director continued to hold the boy as if in chains. A light purple haze enveloped them both. The girl came closer to him and said that they were gods. She gently touched him with her hands. Meanwhile, Xu Chen's partner asked the fair-haired guy why it was so hard to make money. If she had known what it would lead to, she would never have agreed. The guy asked to go with him. She brought the right person as agreed. Now payment follows. She couldn't understand exactly what he was saying to her. The girl's face immediately changed. When she heard about the payment, she jumped up and started screaming joyfully. She immediately followed the boy, trusting him completely. The girl thought only about money. The blonde guy asked where her two partners were. The girl replied that they were wounded, so she sent them to rest. Then the guy began to approach her and exclaimed that he would then take her body first. A red eye was emerging from his hand, and his body was shrouded in a purple haze. He pointed his hand towards the girl. That eye seemed to be staring at her. The girl began to move back, seriously scared. Could there really be some kind of parasite in his hand? She tried to protect herself from his hand. The girl jumped to the side, and the force from the guy's hand hit the glass. The glass immediately shattered, and the wall began to crumble like cardboard. The girl turned into a cute tigress. Instead of hands, she had paws with claws, ears, and a tiger tail. She asked what he was doing. The guy noticed that she had a quick reaction, as expected from a Zerolude. The girl thought to herself that she was no match for him. When she jumped up, he stretched out his flexible arm and grabbed her leg. Then, with a deft movement, he brought her closer to him and with his other hand, lifted her by the throat above the floor. The girl immediately began to cough. It was hard for her to breathe. He did not let go of her neck. A bright purple haze appeared from somewhere and surrounded them both. Blood gushed from the boy's hand. The girl bounced off him like lightning. She instantly fell to the floor and began to wail in pain. The guy said that naturally there was another one here. When Moda entered the room, he asked who he was. The boy held all his strength and power in his hand. The girl thanked him for saving her. Moda asked not to misunderstand him, but he just doesn't want her opponent to become stronger after he absorbs her. How did she come across such a nasty opponent? A parasite? Their species has super regeneration and can use the host's body's potential to 100%. Fortunately, his current shell is human. Moda told the girl that if she wanted to live, she should get out of here. She immediately agreed and started running away. The blonde boy said that he didn't expect the little shrimp to escape, but a bigger fish would appear. He exclaimed that his body would be taken. But Moda immediately put up a defense and responded that he was taking on too much. He called his opponent a worthless parasite. Meanwhile, Shu Chen asked Qin Shu what she meant about the gods. Then she leaned closer to him and asked if he didn't know about it. She is his ideal life system, and does he know who is hiding in his body? The boy got really angry. He asked the girl to tell him everything she knew about it. Qin Shu replied that it seemed that he had not yet merged with his deity. It seemed that now was the best time to absorb it. After these words, she reached out to him with her hand, but the boy stopped her, slapping her hand away. He said that it looked like this time he would finally get to the truth. He asked him not to clown around and tell everything he knew, otherwise he would know pain. Qin Shu said that he had a powerful, amazing power, and she wants to see if he can satisfy her. The girl called him by name, looking coquettishly into his eyes. Qin Shu put her hand forward again, her gaze never leaving the boy. There were many bright purple rays around him. He began to put up a defense by putting his hands in front of him. He couldn't understand what was happening. The girl had suddenly disappeared somewhere. Xu Chen tried to see something through the purple haze. He put his hand forward as if blocking something that wasn't there. Li Huntley appeared in front of him. He was very surprised and asked how she got there. The girl threw herself into the boy's arms and asked what he was talking about. She had been waiting for him here the whole time. She put her hands around his face and said that she knew what he did to her that night. The girl began to cuddle up to him and asked if he would take responsibility for this. She approached him, wanting to merge into a kiss, but Shu Chen immediately pushed her away. He said that casually, looking into the hearts of others, or was this her ability? Huntley turned into Qin Shu. She said that the boy was able to break free from the spell. It seems that she did not make it realistic enough to touch him. She asked why wake up? Wouldn't it be nice to die in tender embraces? But the boy looked sternly into her eyes and exclaimed that this was only her pathetic illusion. Qin Shu smiled wryly in response and said that he was right. She explained that he had indeed erased that girl's memory. Although such a harlot is truly unworthy of such memories, Su Chen was simply furious. In anger, he asked the girl to shut her mouth. He clenched his fists and rushed towards his opponent, his eyes shining with emptiness. Dark smoke began to emerge from them, but he was enveloped in a bright purple light again. Qin Shu put up a defense and asked what kind of aggression he had. Had she really pressed on a sore spot? Xu Chen took his fighting stance again. His whole body was ablaze with anger, and he was in a black haze. The girl stood in front of him, waiting for the attack. What will he do, she thought. The bright purple light continued to glow around the girl and spread throughout the room. Suddenly, the boy knelt down and lowered his head. Qin Shu thought that he had fallen to his knees in front of her. She noticed that it seemed like that girl wasn't that important to him. Qin Shu crossed her arms and looked at the guy. Her gaze was too piercing. But for a moment she began to hesitate. The boy directed all his aggression and strength at her. Black rays streamed in her direction. With one movement of his hand, he began to push the girl away from himself. A powerful blow occurred. She flew high into the air, then fell to the floor. A pool of blood appeared on the parquet. Her gaze changed. Qin Shu wondered how he did it. Sweat was running down her face and blood was dripping onto the floor. The boy raised it up, pierced it with his hand, and exclaimed that there was no need to wag his tongue. His hand went through his chest and came out the other side. The bleeding girl said that he really did kill her. But then she smiled and exclaimed that she was joking. Suddenly she was behind him, and she said that he had a very fast blow. If he had not hit the illusion, he really could have killed her. Qin Shu laughed loudly and clung to the boy, exclaiming that it was her turn now. The boy couldn't understand what was happening. He froze in place and couldn't move. The girl explained to him that she feeds on other people's souls. He is like her. They are both special. There is a powerful force hidden in their souls. That's why she was looking for him. The girl exclaimed that they were the only ones in this world. Having said this phrase, she pressed her lips to his and said that now his divinity belonged to her. She continued to kiss the boy. They were enveloped in Shu Chen's black haze. The passionate kiss continued, but suddenly her gaze changed again. The girl was completely sweating. She pulled away from Shu Chen. Black smoke started coming out of her mouth. Qin Shu couldn't stop coughing loudly. The black smoke pushed her far back. The girl flew away and began to wipe her lips. She could not understand what had happened. When the boy also fell to the floor, leaning his hands on the parquet, he realized that something had happened to the system. Is she trying to devour him while he sleeps? He fears that her insatiable appetite will lead to her death. Shu Chen had no intention of giving in. He grabbed the system's hand with his teeth and began to strangle it. He exclaimed that he finally showed up. He tried to kill him, but the system asked to wait a little bit, announcing a break. Shu Chen asked what he meant by replacing him. He asked what the guy was up to and let him tell the truth. Meanwhile, Qin Shu heard the noise and thought about it. She pricked up her ears, and she became curious about what was going on there. After all, the noise still didn't stop. Then the partner from Shu Chen's body jumped out and kicked the boy. He sent him flying far, far away. He called him stupid and said that replacing him would literally mean taking away his body. Shu Chen realized that from his first appearance, everything had been set up. A shitty physique, a perfect life system, earning merit points, a year of life, etc. It was all arranged by him to take over his body. The man who came out of it couldn't understand what happened to this guy. He exclaimed that it seemed the boy was not such an idiot. He asked if it was Mota who had told him everything. The boy got even more angry and realized that he was right. Then the system asked, even if he was right, so what? Nothing had changed. In any case, his body would no longer be his. Shu Chen became angry. His eyes were bloodshot. Suddenly, Qin Shu came over. They both turned around at the sound of clapping hands. The girl said that the two of them were chatting very well, but to leave a lady alone was not very gentlemanly. She is still waiting for Shu Chen to satisfy her. The system turned towards the girl. The ghost man said that he had almost forgotten about her, but the pathetic LKD dared to speak up. The girl became very angry. LKD is an abbreviation and slang name for a company that exports Chinese tractors. The system in the form of a guy and asked how she dared to wake him up and even try to eat him. The guy exclaimed that he would kill her and feed her to the dogs. Qin Shu became even more furious. She began to concentrate and with one movement of her hand waved in his direction. The girl sincerely wished him death. Shu Chen decided that this was another one of her illusions. He grabbed his neck with his hand. The boy couldn't move again, and Qin Shu had already caught the system, coming up from behind and hugging her. She said that at first she wanted to gradually absorb him from his body, but he decided to jump into her arms himself. The girl smiled and asked him to be a good boy and become part of her power. But the guy asked how she dared to talk such nonsense. Suddenly, there was a powerful explosion. Everything around was shattered into pieces. The girl jumped back, putting up a defense in front of herself. She couldn't understand where such strength came from. Meanwhile, Shu Chen fell to the floor, completely enveloped in a black shroud. He suddenly realized something. Sweat was running down the boy's face. He looked at his hand. Shu Chen didn't understand why it had become so transparent. Black smoke enveloped the entire room. It was as if someone had appeared in the room. What could it be? The boy exclaimed that he was free. The boy who came out of him became different. He exclaimed that only with a physical body could one feel so free. Now things have gotten much worse. It turns out that the ghost man has become much stronger. Qinxiu noticed that this already looked much more dangerous. Very bad indeed. The girl decided that she had enough of playing around and needed to end it quickly. She decided to use her power. A pink shroud enveloped everything around. In front of them, there was some kind of demon with a human face. He had horns and sharp claws. A man with black claws and beautiful red eyes began to peer through the pink haze. She enveloped him completely, only his eyes were visible. Qinxiu laughed and said that once he came into contact with her divinity, he would be absorbed at double the speed. But he pulled out his hand and began to concentrate the black ball in it, which glowed from within with white light and many rays scattered around. This ball began to approach the girl. Its force pushed her far away. Qinxiu flew back. She noticed that this demon was very strong. The girl thought that he was the strongest of all she had ever met. The demon said that she was too weak. He exclaimed that he was in a great hurry and asked her to call her deity. Everything around was ablaze with a bright purple light. That's how great the guy's power was. He tore everything apart with one movement. The walls flew apart and the floor exploded. Someone's severed arm with an eye appeared on the floor. This arm began to groan and cough. And then someone's sinister hand fell to the ground. A lot of smoke appeared around it. White fluffy clouds seemed to have grabbed this hand. The eye in the middle of the palm looked very intently forward. White clouds enveloped the hand and it began to turn into a man. The eye continued to look forward. The hand gradually turned into a blonde boy. Qinxiu stood next to him. Moda was opposite this guy. He was watching what was happening carefully. 5 minutes ago, he called this guy a worthless parasite. The boy exclaimed that he was taking on too much. He was enveloped in purple flame. The blonde boy's hand reached out to Moda. He wanted to attack him. But the boy was very dexterous, and with one movement, he cut off the blonde boy's hand. His hand flew down. It fell with a crash to the floor. Moda did not miss the opportunity to deal with him. The blonde boy stood in front of him with his hand cut off. He gave him a contemptuous look. Suddenly, a cloud began to envelop his severed hand, and it seemed to grow back. Moda noticed that the parasite's super regeneration was indeed a nuisance. The boy was approaching him with another attack, his gaze fixed forward. The blonde boy put out his hand to block his opponent's attack, and so they rushed towards each other. Moda waved his sharp weapon in front of him. With one movement of his hand, he cut the guy in half. A lot of blood spilled around. The guy's body parts were lying on the floor. His shoes were lying separately. Moda exclaimed, turning to the boy's scraps, that this time he would not get up. But the boy's gaze fell on his body parts. They slowly began to come together. Moda couldn't understand how this was possible. Even the strongest parasites didn't have such powerful regenerative abilities. The boy came up and stood in front of the blonde guy. He asked who he was anyway. The boy exclaimed in response that he did not have enough strength. He noted that it looked like he would not be able to defeat him in a battle of attrition. The fair-haired man did not calm down. He began to approach him and said that in that case he had won. Moda replied that he was not answering his question. And why was he talking this nonsense? The exchange of merits was successful. The ability limitation was lifted by 10%, duration 5 minutes. Moda put his hand forward and began to use fifth-order magic. A powerful explosion occurred. Everything around lit up with bright purple rays. The fair-haired man did not expect such a turn of events. Violet flames engulfed everything around. Moda broke the wall with his power and many fragments flew around. The hand jumped to the side, a red eye looking out from it. Qinxiu exclaimed that he had been driven to this. She asked the blonde guy who was so good. The guy replied that it was one unusual demon. Moda appeared in the hole in the wall and asked if they had ordered the recent attack. The boy's gaze fell on the demon boy standing in front of him. Could these really be two evil gods? But Moda interrupted himself and said that this is not so. He is the system that has taken on this appearance. The demon boy exclaimed that the little bug was here too. Moda told the master that he wouldn't hurt him. And he thought to himself, didn't the master say that the system had disappeared? Moda looked at the boy's hand. He asked him what happened to his hand. Shu Chen replied that he himself did not know. After the system took this form, his left hand became transparent. Does he still think of him as a system? The demon guy said that since everything was already finished, he could tell him the truth. Looking into his eyes, he exclaimed that he was actually one of the deities separated from the body of the god of evil. They can call him the fourth deity. The demon boy's eyes shone with joy and power. He added that recalling the past, the aftermath of the decisive battle between the evil god and the other gods, not only was his body completely destroyed, but his divinity was also split into pieces. These fragments traveled through time and space, and then they all fell on this backward planet. And he was lucky enough to find the reincarnated body of an evil god. His. He had his flesh, and he had his powers. To get his body, he created various difficulties for him and tricked him into using his powers. Every time he borrowed his power, his control over the body weakened. After he completely takes over his body, he will gather the other deities and complete the great resurrection of the evil god. He laughed and asked if the boy was happy. He would finally be on top of the world. Moda was very angry, but Shu Chen asked him to calm down. Since he told it all, he doesn't think it's true. He's a skilled liar. The demon replied that it was very boring. The two of them had been waiting for a long time, and now he was asking permission to crush them. At this point, Qin Xiu intervened. She asked if he had finished bragging about his strength. At first, she wanted to offer a fair 2 for 2, but after what she saw, she decided not to give them a single chance. The girl waved her hand and cut off the guy's head. She smiled slyly and said that they must have never tried anything like this. Su Chen didn't expect this. Could it be that this girl was consumed? She spoke of perfection and omnipotence. Her hands became black with sharp claws. Qin Xiu said that only when the host and the deity become one can one fully experience this pleasure. Su Chen was very surprised. How did they become one? That is, Qin Xiu is still here. Moda told the master that this is not an absorption but a fusion of their souls. The girl began to approach them closer, enveloped in bright purple rays. She asked if he was scared. The guy replied that they merged together, and so what? Could this really be her trump card? The demon boy exclaimed that the trash deity was nothing before this evil god. He began to approach closer and closer to the girl. He was shrouded in a black, ominous haze. The demon guy clenched his fists and told the girl that he couldn't be intimidated by weak magic. Qin Xiu looked at his eyes, rejected the blow, and wondered if this was the blow of an evil god. He didn't look imposing. The demon became angry, clenching his fists, and asked her to shut up immediately. The girl decided not to give up. She concentrated all her power against the demon. She put her hand forward and winked at the boy, pointing it in his direction. The demon clenched his fists, but realized that now he would have to defend himself. The girl's blow hit him right in the face. It was a very strong and powerful blow. He flew into the wall and hit his back. He broke the whole wall with it, after which he asked her to stop using her worthless tricks. Qin Xiu laughed and raised her hands. What kind of petty tricks is he talking about? She directed all her power in the form of purple waves towards the demon. He flew back again and began to cough up blood. The boys watching this couldn't understand how Qin Xiu had suddenly become so strong. Moda asked the master if it would be better for them to leave here. Qin Xiu smirked as she looked in their direction. She seemed to overhear the conversation and told the boy that he could leave if he wanted. The demon boy couldn't understand how she became so strong after merging. He decided that if things continued like this, it could all end badly for him. The girl directed a powerful stream of energy at him. It was a whole powerful circle of purple color. The guy put up a block and looked at Zhu Chen. He asked the guy if he was really just going to watch. Zhu Chen replied that she was looking for him, so why would they die together? The demon began to shout and call the boy names. He gave him an angry look, and he said that if he died now, the boy would also die just like him. The demon began to explain, with the last of his strength, that the deity and the carrier are symbiotically connected. The demon guy asked him not to run, and asked if he understood what he had just said. If he doesn't want to die, let him come back and help him. When Shu Chen wanted to go help, Moda exclaimed that he could be lying. Su Chen replied that if he died, then Moda would kick the bucket too. Everything he had now would disappear. Was he ready for that? Meanwhile, Qin Xiu said that he was talking too much. She waved her hand, and she directed all her power towards the demon guy. He fell face down. He once again looked up at Shu Chen and asked him to help him quickly. Qin Xiu stepped on him with her foot and asked him not to yell. She said that he had already escaped. After he left his body, he was useless. As for him, let him obediently become his strength. But before she could finish speaking, someone's black hand with claws reached out from behind her. The demon boy kept asking for help. He closed his eyes and asked Zhu Chen to save him. The girl did not expect such a turn of events. When someone's hand was on her, she froze. The streams of black energy from behind her enveloped the girl. Xu Chen tried to attack her. He clenched his heavy fist and approached her. He wanted to hit her, but when the fist flew towards Qin Xiu, the girl instantly dodged. Xu Chen couldn't tell if he had succeeded. Moda was already running towards him. He hurried to help as quickly as possible. But Qin Xiu was very strong and stood firmly on her feet. Xu Chen asked the demon why he was lying down. Wasn't he the one asking for his help? The demon guy laughed and replied that he still had the same balls. He didn't expect that the deity would become so strong after merging with the host, and it looks like they too will have to unite to survive this disaster. Xu Chen asked what was required of him. Then the demon guy chuckled and replied that naturally his body was required. Directing his energy at him, he asked the boy to relax, calm the body and mind, and do not disturb it. Let its power flow within it. Qin Xiu was surprised. She realized that they were starting to merge, but this was their first merger and it would not be a threat to them. Xu Chen didn't understand what was going on. He was seriously worried. The progress of the fusion was 5%. The demon could not understand whether he had merged with the deity. Could this really be the fusion with the deity? Why does he feel weaker? Someone asked him to listen to what they say to him. There is no need to resist him. If the magic power cannot enter his body, then naturally the fusion will fail. The fusion progress was already 10%. The demon guy exclaimed that the process must be led by this deity. Even the body is to his taste. Well, what will she say now? Just let her give in. He exclaimed that he wanted to touch her divinity. The girl grimaced and remarked that it was quite disgusting. But the demon guy wondered why his body was rejecting him. Suddenly, both guys fell to the floor. Xu Chen exclaimed that if he did not resist, the demon would change his body to his own horrible taste. Naturally, he was against it. The demon replied that he simply did not know about it. And the girl, in turn, cast a contemptuous glance at them and thought that they were like two clowns. She concentrated her powers on them and flew as close as possible. Qin Xiu wanted to kill them as soon as possible. The demon boy asked Xu Chen to react quickly. He noticed that she was rushing towards them, and now the merging with the deity has begun. Again, clouds of black smoke. The girl found herself in these black webs, as if in shackles. Her power in pink rushed towards the enemy. Xu Chen flew as close to her as possible and grabbed her vile hand with long black claws. When he grabbed the girl by the hand, her look changed. She couldn't break free. The boy threw the girl as far away from himself as possible. She flew far away and fell to the ground. Turning around to look at the guys, she realized that apparently they had succeeded after all. The fusion process is 30%. Xu Chen Demon asked if she was ready to swing. Qin Xiu rose into the air and began to approach the boy. She tried to grab his weapon. Xu Chen raised his sharp sword as high as he could to repel the girl's attack. With one movement, he pushed her far back. It was as if some kind of explosion had occurred between them. He chopped the girl's pink cloth into small pieces. They flew to the floor, neatly landing on the parquet. The boy's sharp weapon did its job. They merged in battle, not giving each other a chance. Their powers touched, striking each other. The girl was very strong. The boy gritted his teeth, swinging his sharp, huge sword. The demon boy told Xu Chen that he was too slow. He asked him to compress his magical energy to increase his speed. It is necessary to strengthen the defense. Constant regeneration will consume too much energy. Against such an opponent, not a drop of magical power can be wasted. The boy gathered all his strength and squeezed his weapon in his hands again. He was shrouded in a black veil. He stood firmly on his feet and then, having lifted himself off the ground, he rushed forward. He was eager to meet the danger, to the point of attacking a formidable enemy. Qin Xiu appeared behind him and exclaimed that he was wasting a lot of magical energy on explosive speed. She wondered if that was all he could do. A huge black hole appeared in the floor. The girl flew up behind Xu Chen, but he took out his weapon in time. The boy waved it at the girl. This time it hit the target. Qin Xiu grabbed her stomach with her hand. Her gaze changed and was filled with despair. The girl began to cough. The enemy's sword pierced her through the chest. She couldn't understand how this happened. The girl exclaimed that her magical power was much stronger. But the boy did not calm down and took her head with his hand. He began to lift her off the ground. Then he raised it as high as he could with one hand, and the other was on the hilt of the sword, which he pierced Qin Xiu with. Looking at her, he wished her death. He wanted the girl to die sooner. Xu Chen cut her in half. Rivers of blood flowed from the girl's body. The boy exclaimed that they had finally won. But then their gaze changed again. The guy realized that they were seeing an illusion again. Had the girl really deceived them again? She began to disappear into a light pink haze that flowed like a mirage around them. It was quite good. Her mastery of illusion had reached perfection. The girl exclaimed that this was the third time. He would not fall for such a thing again. After hanging in the air for a bit, she decided that now she would need something much more powerful. It was too loud. Had these psychos forgotten the rules? The girl smiled, deciding to act differently. The exchange of merits was successful. The ability limitation was lifted by 40%. And the demon boy had a strange feeling. He asked Zhu Chen to use the merits quickly. Merit exchange successful. Ability limitation lifted by 30%. This area must be hidden so that the gods cannot see anything. A cosmic barrier appeared before them. Qin Xiu was already acting according to her new plan. She soared into the air as high as she could and began heading towards them. She made several pink rings in front of her, like a portal. Verse Dream's Teeth Girl began to fly up to opponents. She exclaimed that the Alien Kingdom Zero style. Zhu Chen exclaimed that the demonic realm was the 100th style, and so they rushed towards each other. In front of them, there seemed to be some planet shrouded in bright flowers. Yellow rays intertwined with pink ones. The boy began to use demonic rage, and the girl used the zero zone. There was a powerful explosion. The sky was illuminated by a red fiery flame. This explosion lit up the sky so much that nothing around could be seen. It was a powerful, bright flame. The demon asked the boy not to stop. He had dealt her a lot of damage. He asked him to take advantage of the moment and finish her off. But the boy realized that an illusion had appeared before them again. The demon advised to read her divinity. It's so overflowing that you can find the original without looking. Or maybe he only needs eyes for beauty. Then the boy, gritting his teeth, replied that he understood everything and explained that he was trying anyway. Qin Xiu said that he still continues to surprise. She herself still can't read the divinity. Maybe he can teach her. The demon laughed and told Zhu Chen that they were still trying to seduce him. The guy asked her to shut up. He may be naive, but he is not a fool. The girl replied that she was indeed envious of his abilities. The guy wondered why he hadn't noticed before that she had a special scent. After the merger, he felt it. And so the boy stood in front of the girl, once again drawing his sharp, huge sword. He began to approach Qin Xiu faster than lightning. The boy exclaimed that she smelled of envy. And then, a powerful blow threw the girl through 3 walls and she found herself on the street. The blonde guy asked her to calm down. And condense the magic. The girl replied that she would kill him, break all his bones and turn them into dust. But first she would turn him into a mummy, sucking out all his juices. Zhu Chen cast a disdainful glance at her, as if he had noticed something ahead. Qin Xiu began to use a foreign realm, namely the 6th style. She directed all her power against the guy and asked him to burn, turning into ashes. Zhu Chen placed a block in front of himself and began to move back a little. A powerful blow attacked him. The boy tried to withstand it by putting his hands forward. This blow was too strong, but he did not give up, repelling the girl's attack. The boy's face became covered in beads of sweat. He exclaimed that he could withstand her attack. Meanwhile, Qin Xiu stood up to her full height and exclaimed that victory was still hers. She closed her eyes and laughed a little. The boy was sitting on one knee, holding something in his hands. He decided to use the demonic realm of the 8th style. He had some kind of glowing bright ball in his hands. The girl noticed that she had not given him a single scratch. The blonde guy asked her to quickly dodge. And so Zhu Chen began to approach the girl with incredible speed. Qin Xiu put her hands forward and glowed with purple rays. She tried to reject the boy's attack, but Zhu Chen seemed to insert his hands into her body and pierce her through. The demon called him handsome. He asked to pull her deity out. The boy's hands were still inside her body. He felt that this body and the power of the deity had merged 100%. He had to get it. And so, having left a bloody wound in the girl's body, for some reason he let her go. The demon got angry and asked what he was doing. He couldn't understand what the boy was planning. Zhu Chen told Qin Xiu that he was stronger than her and would become even stronger. He doesn't care about all this stuff with deities, but he doesn't need this bastard right now. If she dared to ruin his life again, he would rip the bones out of her body and make her die painfully. After which, the boy asked her to leave immediately. The girl was lying on the ground. She didn't expect him to have mercy on her, and she immediately thanked the boy. The demon flew up to him and asked if he had forgotten what she wanted to do to him. How could he just let her go? But the guy replied that if he killed her, the demon would eat him after that. Then the demon got angry and asked if it would not be nice to die quietly and peacefully. How many people in this world want to die without pain, but cannot do so? The site of the battle was in ruins. Piles of stones lay around. The demon told Shu Chen that he was a man who had lived most of his life as a nobody, and after his appearance, he immediately reached his peak. He stood in front of him, sincerely speaking about it, and he said that, unlike him, there is something. When he woke up, he was half asleep, stuck in the depths of his soul, waking up from the farce of his daily life every time he fell asleep. And when he fell asleep, he experienced humiliation and the unwillingness to be defeated by the gods, and he could do nothing. But he is very grateful to him because he gave him another chance, and he helped him, did everything possible. But now, finally, there is an opportunity to fulfill his cherished wish. The great revenge on the gods could finally be accomplished. They continued to stand opposite each other and talk. He is not all-powerful, even his life is borrowed from him. Shouldn't he repay him for everything? Shu Chen replied that he didn't know what the demon had done for him. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps it would be worthwhile to give his dog's life into his hands as payment. The former him would have had no doubts. But now they appeared to him, Shu Chen decided to defend his life and his opinion. Since he was soft, why did the demon decide that he had the right to set conditions for him? The demon asked him to think carefully. Experience, ability, strength, everything is in his hands. He didn't even learn to fight. What right does he have to say no? He grabbed the boy by the lapels. His life, his expensive car and his mansion, and even his current strength, all of this is him for him. The demon hit the boy in the face with all his might and exclaimed that the time of luxurious living was over. What is he trying to grab onto? Maybe the recent battle made him think he's worth something. Even in an expensive car, bad things will still be bad. Shu Chen thought that everything he had now was not his. The boy began to fly away from the powerful blow of the demon. He thought that the master of all this is the system. Shu Chen flew back, but he pulled himself together in time. He stopped the demon's fist. The boy exclaimed that he would not give up now that he had just started. He said he wanted to do something more. He wants to do more good for the world, much more than he did before. The demon called the boy an ant who does not know his place and never knew. Shu Chen asked to forgive him. He can hate him, he can beat him, but he will not leave or retreat until he achieves his goal. The demon called his thoughts childish dreams. He threatened to kill the boy. He clenched his strong fists and decided to attack the boy. Shu Chen exclaimed that even a strong ant is still a bug and began flying towards him with his fists clenched. He got very close and tried to strike. He swung his fist right at the demon's face. A powerful blow landed on his face. The demon could not understand how this was possible. He was thrown far to the side. Shu Chen was also slightly battered. He continued to fight back against the demon's attack, and drops of blood spurted from his mouth. The demon was very angry and asked how he dared to resist. He approached the boy, wanting to attack him. Many explosions sounded around. The boy repelled another attack of the demon. It was a very interesting battle. Shu Chen threw the demon away from him. He fell to the ground, very angry. When the demon hit him back with all his might, he decided that it wasn't worth doing. If he dies, he will sleep for more than 10 years. He called Shu Chen bad names. He asked to continue until the boy was satisfied. The demon grabbed his head and, looking at the boy, called him stubborn.